Today on our 2017 Toyota Tundra, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Firestone Ride-Rite Air Helper Springs, part number F2445. This is what our airbags look like when they're installed. These are going to be custom fit for your vehicle. There's not going to be any drilling required. It's going to fit directly into existing holes in your frame. What's going to set these bags apart from others is they're going to have 4 layers of reinforced rubber for strength. It's also going to have a braided wire girdle, runs around the center. It's going to make it double convoluted, which is going to increase durability, and it's going to allow you to add more air pressure. Another thing that's going to set these bags apart is the design on your end caps. The rubber actually rolls inside of your cap, which is going to allow you to let your axle hang when getting serviced, as opposed to some of the other ones where the axle has to be supported. These Firestone Air Helper Springs are going to offer you a 4,800 pound load leveling capacity. You just want to make sure you're not exceeding the vehicle's load capacity. Another nice thing about these airbags is if you have an uneven load in the back of your vehicle, you can increase or decrease the amount of air pressure to level that load out. Now we have the ability to adjust our air springs from 5 psi up to 100 psi. With the load we had today, we only had to have it at about 50 psi to bring our vehicle back to normal ride height. To begin our installation, we're going to need to get a measurement for a normal ride height. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure from the ground in the center of our wheel up to the bottom of our fender. And our normal ride height in the rear is going to be about 39¼ inches. Now let's do the same with the front. We're at about 36¾ inches. Now that we've added some weight, let's take another measurement. Again, we're going to go from the ground to the top side of our fender here, or top inside of our fender. And it looks like we've dropped our rear end about 3 inches. Let's go ahead and look at the front. And it looks like we've raised our front end about a ½ inch. Now what this is going to do, this is going to put unnecessary strain on your suspension, both front and back, unnecessary wear and tear on your tires. It's going to affect your steering, overall handling, and your braking of your vehicle. Now that we have our airbags installed, with our weight on the back of our truck, let's go ahead and take another measurement. Again, from the ground, the top side of our fender, as you can see, we're back to our normal ride height. Now let's check out the front. We've brought our front back down that ½ inch, back to normal ride height. Now that we've brought our vehicle back to normal ride height, what that's going to do is going to take the unnecessary stress off of our suspension. It's going to increase our steering. It's also going to decrease the amount of wear and tear on our tires, thus keeping money in our pockets because we're not going to have to replace them as often. Before we start our installation on our driver's side airbag, what we want to do is we want to give us some space between our frame and our leaf spring. Now, we have it up on stands or on a lift for better viewing purposes. If you're going to do this in your garage, what you want to do is take a jack, and if you put it right on the bottom of your hitch and just slightly raise the vehicle up, that'll let your axle hang just a little. We've got jack stands holding our back up, giving us that separation. Now I've gone ahead and removed the spare tire to make it a little bit easier to see. First thing we need to do is we need to cut off our joust stop. We're going to try to cut it as level to the top of our U-bolts on our leaf springs as possible. Whatever means you can, or whatever means you have, you want to take that off. Next thing we're going to do is we need to remove the nut that's holding on our fuel pump control. We'll use a 12mm socket, and you'll have a nut right here on the outside of your frame. And then we'll have one more towards the front of the vehicle. Now to hold our 2 brackets onto our frame, we're going to have a 1/4 inch hex bolt, followed by a lock washer. You're going to follow that by a flat washer. We're going to go from the inside of the frame through the bracket, through the frame to the outside. And then you're going to put on a flat washer. You're going to follow it with a lock washer and then the nut. Next, we'll install one of the brackets on the front bolt, and then reinstall the nut. We'll do the same thing with our second bracket. So now we're just going to line up our brackets with our holes before we tighten them down completely. That's what it looks like. You can see how our brackets are facing towards the front of the vehicle. Go ahead and tighten them down there. We have it one more look to make sure our brackets haven't moved, and it looks like we're still lined up. Now we want to assemble our airbag to our brackets. You're going to have two brackets in your kit that look like this. This is going to face down towards the ground. So we're going to install the airbag with that single hole right on top like this. We're going to have our 3/8 hex bolt that's going to come in your kit. It's already going to have thread locker installed in the threads. We're just going to loosely install it or thread it into the hole in the airbag for right now. We'll just hand tighten it. What we want is we want that to be able to move in that bracket so we can line it up. Next, we'll pull off this cap. This larger hole is going to go over this threaded bolt here, and the smaller hole is going to go on this tab that's coming out of the top of the airbag. It's going to help keep this plate from spinning. So now we'll set it up on our frame. So now we'll take our bracket, and this part here is going to go over top of our U-bolts. Pull down. You can see the threaded part's going to go right up through that hole that's in the frame. So what you want is you want to line it up so that these two little knots that are in the frame line up with the two holes in your top bracket. So it's going to sit just like that. And you want to make sure that the little tab that's on top of the airbag is also seated inside the hole in that top bracket. So in the process of lining this up, this is going to be the same on both sides. You see this bracket right here, it's holding your brake line in place. What we need to do is, if you notice the hole right here, it's not giving us enough room to get a bolt in. So what we need to do is just kind of bend it out of the way just a little bit. Just enough to get our bracket to slide in. Once we have our 4 holes lined up on both sides of our leaf springs, I'm going to take a paint marker and we're going to mark. What I like to do is just mark like this on the bracket and on the bag. Now you can just do it on the bottom if you want. I actually like doing it on the top one also. Now we'll pull it back down and we're going to tighten our 3/8 bolt on the bottom of the bag. Now we'll line up our 2 marks, tighten it into place. Next we'll take a 14mm socket, torque it down to the specifications and the instructions. Once you get it tight, put it back into place. We're going to take 4 large carriage bolts that come in our kit. We're going to drop them through the holes. You have 2 here and you're going to have 2 on the other side. You're going to have 2 brackets like this that are going to be for each side of the vehicle. You'll see one side has a longer hole in it. That's going to face toward the inside of the vehicle. So we'll slide our bracket over our carriage bolts like this. And you're going to have some flange nuts. Get those on. And we'll put on our other bracket. Now we'll take our 14mm socket. Now we're going to tighten our nuts down that are holding our brackets on the bottom of our leaf springs. You notice the wires that are running across here, you want to make sure that your bracket's going above them so you don't pinch them. What we want to do is we just want to tighten these enough to where that bracket is up against our leaf springs and not moving. We don't want to torque it down real hard or tighten it down real hard just yet. And we'll do the same thing to our front bracket here. Next we can torque our bolts to the specifications and the instructions. Next we're going to have a large flat washer. Put it on our top bolt from our bag. And then we're going to have a large nut that has thread locker inside the threads. We're going to thread that into place and tighten it down. Use a 24mm socket or wrench. Once you have that tightened, you can torque it down to the specifications and the instructions. Now we're going to take our air fitting and we're going to thread it into the top center of our large bolt that's coming out from the top of our bag. One thing to keep in mind is you don't want to over tighten this. So we're going to tighten it to where it's snug, and then we're going to do one more quarter turn. Take a 12mm wrench. Snug. And we'll do a quarter turn. Next, we're going to install our airline. It's a good idea if you take your airline, put your two ends together, find the center, and then cut it in half. That way you have plenty for both sides. Now, if you don't have an airline cutter, you can find one on our website using part number F9009. You just want to make sure you're not cutting this with side cutters, because you don't want to pinch this, because it could cause a leak. Now I'll route my airline tube. I'm going to go above this brace. You got to remember, we got to have our spare tire here. We don't want our line to get smashed. Go above like this. And in your bed frame cross beams, you're going to have holes. We're going to go through one of them, again above the bracket that holds your spare tire in place. And then what you want to do is we're going to cut off that end just to make sure we have a nice, clean, even connection. Just like that. And all we're going to do is we're going to push it into place so it won't move, and then you're going to kind of tug on it a little bit and make sure you got a good lock on it. Next, you're going to have a bracket, comes in your kit, and this gets mounted on your hitch. And you have another option. You can also drill a hole into your bumper itself. Customer chose to use this bracket. And you're going to have two large zip ties to hold it in place. So we'll feed it through our bracket like this. We're going to loop it up and over our hitch. We'll have our two airline fittings that are going to go onto our bracket. We're going to remove the white cap. Make sure you hold on to that. We're going to remove the nut. Then we're going to have 4 flat washers. You're going to have 2 for each one. Put on a flat washer. We're going to put it in the bracket. Put on another flat washer. And then we're going to replace the nut. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Then we'll take a couple wrenches and we'll tighten those up just enough to where they're snug. We'll use a 13mm socket and wrench. Again, you don't want these real tight. You just want them snug so they don't move. Once you have your driver's side airbag installed, you go ahead and repeat the same process on the passenger side, with the exception of your fuel pump control. We're going to wait to reinstall this until after we've got air in the bags and we've tested all of our fittings to make sure we don't have any leaks. Now our driver's line airline tube, again, you can route it however you want. I'm routing it right here to this existing wiring. This is going to help keep it out of the way of our spare tire. It'll keep it up against the back of the vehicle. I just took some zip ties that come in your kit, zip tied on there, just like that. And then we can cut our hose to the length that we need. And insert it into our fitting. Push it until it stops. Give it a little tug. Make sure you got a good hold on it. And we'll do the same thing with our passenger side airline. Now, one difference on the passenger side is you're going to have some sleeves that come in your kit. And what those are for is you slide them over top of your airline tube. It's going to help protect that tubing from your exhaust heat. Once you have both bags installed, we're going to add some air to them. We're going to add about 70 pounds, and then we're going to check all of our fittings for any air leaks. Now we're going to take some soapy water, or water soap solution. We're going to spray it on our fittings. What we're looking for is we're looking for large bubbles. We're going to do that same thing with the remaining air fittings. Once you've determined you don't have any leaks, you can reinstall your fuel pump control. Next we'll take an 11mm socket and 11mm wrench, and we can tighten down our hardware that's holding on our fuel pump control. Once you have your fuel pump control back in place, you can reinstall your spare tire, lower your vehicle back down on the ground, you're ready to go. And that'll do it for a look at and installation on the Firestone Ride-Rite Air Helper Springs, part number F2445 on our 2017 Toyota Tundra.
Thanks for watching, and click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com. And leave us a comment if you have any questions.